Hey, welcome back. We are in the O freaking T. We got Tim up here. We got Wes over there. We got Brian, the handsome Cristiano, over here. Wait, over there. That's hard. That's hard to do. And we're back, and we're in the OT and spend a little extra time. First question I had for you. This is so probably stupid, large, vague. What do you think is the future of marketing?
This question is to me, right?
Oh,
It's not the West, that's for sure.
It's not for me either.
I was like, Tim, man, you got a big question to answer. Oh, wait, this is for me.
They don't want my advice.
What's the future of marketing? Well, I think there's going to be like two curves happening at once, like the next 3 to 4 years, and then the next 5 to 10 years, right? I think the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to see a continued decline in traditional media, right? Like it was already happening. I've been, yelling from the mountaintops for the last decade that, TV is ineffective and inefficient for the most part. And a lot of print stuff, with the exception of like super niche things, ineffective. I've been saying that forever. Now, zoom out and what's happened with the whole pandemic is that it's accelerated that. You would think that more people are sitting down and watching TV. We're watching the ratings go down across basically, every single type of TV. Everything. Yeah. Right? Like people want to single out football or the NFL for X reason or Y, but it's everything, right? Like viewership is down with the exception of maybe politics right now, but that's a short-lived, instance. And, and here's the thing, right? Like everybody's spending more and more time on this thing, right? We're all like stuck here. We're all just sitting here like looking at, the news, the updates, et cetera. We're spending more and more time on our phones. And so it's becoming more and more obvious to the bigger media buyers, like the big ones spending hundreds of millions and billions of dollars into the economy of media, that it's not really working. And the other challenge is there's not enough to buy right now, which normally drives prices up. But the problem with that is actually the opposite currently, right? There's just not enough reach that can be had. And so we're seeing efficiency and effectiveness go down. I think some of the big media players are also struggling, and we're seeing things like, Disney, you got 10 million people to sign up for their OTT app in the first 24 hours. And I forget how many people are on there now, but it's tremendous. And so we're seeing things like that really win. We're seeing Netflix just absolutely, I know we could talk about the economics of Netflix. That's a different conversation. But the viewership of Netflix, they're still crushing it, right? I mean, like, especially during the pandemic, like, they're coming out with all of their own content, that people are really getting sucked into and watching. And so we're watching the OTT stuff take over, not just like Facebook and Instagram. Yes, that's where we're spending a lot of our time, but from like the longer format, like media, it's shifting. It's not on broadcast television anymore. And even sports are shifting. Sports isn't going to go away. But you don't think that and I can't talk about it, but I do know some companies right now that are innovating some like app type experiences, like multi-camera things where it's sort of an OTT experience. You don't think I'd rather, be able to pick the camera that I'm watching in my NFL game than watch the one camera that CBS thinks I should watch? No. So I think what's going to happen in these next 3 to 4 years is we're going to see a bit of a collapse in certain large media, accelerated by the pandemic and the economics of it. Then what we're going to see over the following like 5 to 10 years is we're going to see a heavy shift into not what people are claiming like, oh, everything's going to be on Facebook. I don't think we're going to be watching like our daily shows on Facebook Live. Like some content, yes, but I think our more traditional media, no. But I think we're going to see some stuff like what Disney did. I think we're going to see, the cable providers and the ISPs have to change their business models to where, hey, instead of giving me 800 channels, 792 of them I don't watch, let me pick my OTT apps. Let me get the HBO package plus the Disney package, et cetera. And part of this, and what people don't realize too, is over these next 5 years, there's a lot of big contracts that are coming up. NFL media contracts are coming up. MLB contracts are coming up, which is just billions of dollars on the line. And so it gives everybody an opportunity to renegotiate. And everybody's eyes are on OTT mobile platforms and looking further out into the future of, how do we make this interactive? So I think marketing and advertising is going to shift towards how do we create engaging content that is in the moment of those different platforms instead of more traditional or just social media marketing.
Take a breath.
I was like, I'm going to talk for 60 seconds. That was like 40 minutes. I
No,
think. Sorry, the
that-
show's over now. Folks, go home.
That's great stuff. And I'm going to, it'll be curious to see. I agree with you. I think the pandemic sped up a process that was probably going to be 5, 6, 8 years and
Yes.
put it into 12 months. And so that's where we're at. One of the things that we were wildly successful with this year was doing an Instagram live every day. We've taken a month off from it because I don't want to say it got stale, but we need to kind of pull back a little bit. Do you see companies going to doing more things like that where they're being more interactive with their customers on a level like that versus anything else they're doing right now?
Smaller, more innovative companies, yes. The bigger companies, I'm still waiting to see. We can find a couple of exceptions, but I think the general rule is, and you were saying it in the last show, like, let me take the same thing I did on one platform and duplicate it onto my newspaper ad. Looks the same as my Instagram post, looks the same as whatever. And that's kind of the playbook of the vast majority of at least the bigger size businesses. So, smaller companies, mid-sized companies, more innovative companies that don't have the luxury of just buying $100 million in media and, seeing how it works, that they don't have that luxury. Yes, I think they're going to, some of them are, and I think they're going to continue to get more innovative. And if you look at, platforms like Cheddar, for example, where they're doing, news and stock market updates and so forth, like, I don't know if it's exactly 24 hours a day, but for the most part, like live stream. I don't think that's the end all be all model, but I think that's getting closer to what we're going to see.
Right. Timmy?
Brian, I think getting to know you, it's important for people that are going to watch this to know your backstory a little bit. And knowing that you had an amazing office in Manhattan, right, that it was fairly new, right, less than a year old, the new office, when this all hit, and now your team is kind of sprinkled around. Why don't you talk a little bit about, well, I guess to tell you, I rewatched season 1. And the episode for season 2, first episode of Growing Bold, is jaw-dropping from a business standpoint as a business owner. I can't imagine getting my team in a room when things were going financially really, really well and just saying to them, look, I don't see the vision here. You can stay or you can go, but we're going this way. Tell us a little bit of how you got to that point from the beginning off your friend's couch, if you want.
Yeah. So, it's really crazy. I mean, so going back about 14 years ago, running my first company, a production company, and just, not really understanding where I needed to put my focus. And I didn't have a business background. And so I did certain things really well. I did other things really poorly. And so I accumulated, tons and tons of, debt in the business, was unable to run it, was unable to make payroll, wasn't able to pay my personal rent, was about to get evicted, ended up living on a couch. Just, total like rock bottom for me back then. And, it took about 6-7 months for me living like that to just like one day wake up and say, hey, I've got two choices. I either continue to kind of grind through the day to day and eventually this catches up with me and I'm homeless on the street or worse, or I go all in and I back myself into the corner, treat it like it's do or die and just go. And I had this revelation, like, what do I have to lose? If I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to end up my outcome is guaranteed. Or I go all in and I push hard and I make some changes and I step up and I changed it all. And I turned that first company around entirely in about a year. I went from being $250,000 in the hole to doing my first $1 million. And so that was like such a learning lesson for me. And it was so important, I think, for me to go through that. And it was super challenging. And I'm obviously, breezing over it. But that to me was a pinnacle of like, okay, if I can get through that, I can get through anything. And just as a footnote, I mean, don't even think that I haven't like replayed that in my head during these times. Go like, hey, because I've got challenges, right? Like, there are a lot of people like, oh no, everything's great, and I'm like, yeah, a lot of things are really great, but there's also a piece of this is not so great, and so like, challenges from a business perspective, and so tougher decisions, and so I've even relived that in my own head and go, dude, if you've been through that, man, you lived on a couch, this is nothing. Like, what else can you do? And so. That to me kind of built, my, confidence and ability to just know that I'm super resilient, which I think is the most important thing in growing any sort of business. And so, what you were talking about of season 2 of Growing Bold, we were doing really well, man. We were working with tons of amazing big brands. We had, a bunch of celebrity clients working with, Jennifer Lopez and Alex Rodriguez right at that time. And something happened that was really fascinating to me. We're doing tons of content. We're doing Growing Bold episodes every week. I'm interviewing like some of the best in the business, in the business world, and like, living the dream. And I walk into the office one day after like a 2-week stretch of not seeing my family, not seeing my dog, and my daughter wasn't born yet. Like just grinding like 18 hours a day. And I walk into the office totally exhausted, but super stoked. And I overhear somebody like saying like, oh, he's back. Must be nice to have a 2-week vacation or something like that. So I pull one of them over. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Sorry, I don't know if we can curse.
You can say whatever the fuck you want.
Okay, good. I'm like, what the fuck are you? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they're like, well, while we're all here doing the hard work, keeping the business alive, you're out like just gallivanting and hanging out on personal jets and shit like that. Blah, blah. I said, do you know what the hell I've been doing? I was like, do you know why we have all these accounts? Because I'm doing that stuff. And I go, it looks cool. Sure. My Instagram stories just show me like, hanging out with celebrities and stuff. I said, but those are all 18-hour days, 20-hour days, busting our ass, like trying to figure things out, negotiating crazy deals and contracts and like dealing with all sorts of issues on, with scaling the company. I said, why are you guys thinking like this? I said, I thought we were all aligned. Like I thought we're all in this together. Like I'm bringing in deals and jobs and brands and clients that some of these people in a normal situation, in a normal big agency, wouldn't even work on these accounts until they're 15 years into what they're doing. And I'm like, you're 3 years into your career, 5 years into your career, and you're like on set with celebrities. Like, why are you complaining at all? And they're like, and they just didn't get it. And so and I just got that vibe for like 2 weeks, like coming into the office and just kind of weird. And I'm like, something's not right here. I was like, I'm building what I see and I'm excited about it on one hand. I was like, but the circle that I've created, the people that are around me, something's wrong. Like, I was like, I can't take this as far as I know I can take it. And even if I could, I don't want that outcome to where like I'm surrounded by people that, aren't aligned with it, that aren't like grateful and excited and willing to push. And I don't expect people to do what I do, but I expect people to be like excited and show up and do their part. And I wasn't getting that. And I just made the decision one day and I was like, again, it's do or die. I'm drawing a line in the sand and I'm going to tell everybody, guys, here's a reminder. This is what we're trying to accomplish. I want all of you on board if you want to be on board. But if this is not your deal, if you're scared of this, if you want something else, if you want to like, gossip behind people's backs in this company, get the F out, man. And I lost about half of the company. I gave them 48 hours to make a decision. And I lost half of the company on that Friday.
If you guys haven't watched that episode, season 2, episode 1, it's jaw dropping. It's right up there on the screen. If you don't believe this, then leave. It was awesome, really good.
Do you look back on that? Because I think having teams, sometimes the hardest thing to do is to sell the vision and to get buy-in. Do you look back on that, take some ownership of they weren't feeling it, or they weren't bought in because maybe they and I get where you're coming from, because they don't see you sitting at home on a Sunday night being consumed with what's going on, or being worried about what's going on, or thinking, or being a thought leader. And I know we joked about that earlier, but it is real.
Sure.
You think some of that was just they just didn't see the vision and they didn't get it, and you do sometimes have to just cut bait and move on and start over, right?
Yeah, look, and the thing is obviously the episode version of this is condensed into 10 minutes or so of what was like a 90-minute presentation, and so in its full scope, I spent the majority of my time taking ownership of that, taking the blame for everything, and and there was other pieces to it too. I had everybody fill out these surveys and everything prior to that meeting, and I went in with all the sorts of data. And I said, look, like I haven't been as good of a leader as I should have been. Like I should have been, explaining all this to you guys from day one. So I'm going to explain it all right now, paint the picture, and then if you want on, let's go. Like let's roll. And if you're questioning it at the end of this, then like it's cool, high five. And I gave them and I said you can either stay on board and we're going to roll. And next Monday when we start, this is going to be a whole new company, or I'll give you a big severance, I forget how many months severance. Your choice on Friday. And so because that was my fear, is like I just didn't want to be this like dictator standing up there and be like, you didn't all love every minute of this, like F you. Like that wasn't my point. It was like, listen, I've realized that this is not the environment that ultimately I'm trying to craft. I'm going to course correct in a very quick manner right now. And if you like this and you get it, like, let's roll. If you don't, or you're nervous about this, or you don't feel like this is a good long-term fit, that's cool. Like, I'll take care of you. Go find your next deal. I'll even write you a recommendation letter. Here, take some capital and go do your next thing. And so about half of the company, which was more than I anticipated, took me up on that offer, which was freaking crazy, man.
You know, I was always kind of in my past industry, I was always kind of looked at as a little crazy, but I loved turnover because I always looked at it and said, freaking, if Tim wants to leave, we're going to get better. And Tim could have been our best seller, but we're going to get better. I love turnover, and I loved running to it. And you know, for you, that had to, you have no choice, but for you, it probably energized the crap out of you to just go chase down some great people to fill the spots, and you're going to get better. You're going to get better. You're going to get better, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, though, on the flip side of that was like, there's also a reality to like, you know, to doing some of those things. You know, I don't regret any of it. I think, you know, had I, you know, because I've thought about that and like, okay, like, because that created some challenges with certain pockets of the business, you know, for a period of time, longer than I would have liked. But I look back and I go, okay, would I have played it differently now? No, I said, no, hell no, absolutely not. Because if that continued the way that it wasn't going to magically like all of a sudden solve itself and get better. It would get more toxic and more challenging, and then would have a bigger version of what I didn't want to create. And it's like, I'm walking into something like the whole purpose of being a business owner, entrepreneur is to create the lifestyle and the, you know, version of the world that you see and that you want. And so if you're just moving forward and you're collecting all this business and revenue, and even if it's putting money in your pocket, but you're creating this environment that isn't what you see and want, why the hell are you doing it? I'd rather burn it all to the ground and start over.
No kidding. Wes, did you have a question?
What I was saying is one of the very first keynotes I ever saw was Tony Hsieh talking about Zappos. And he had that very same sort of you know, mentality that, you know, if you're not a fit here, I want to make it a fit for where you are great. And it sounds like Brian did a very similar thing, you know, where, you know, if it's not a fit here, let me find a fit where it is good for you. Yeah, to where we can find a perfect, you know, synergy here because it's not here, but
and sometimes
somewhere
it's kicking the ass. I remember
you,
back in the 80s when I was selling for a company, and the owner called me up. Called me in his office. I thought I was killing it, and he said, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "Oh, great." You know, he's like, "Is it?" And I go, "Yeah, I go, demo, blah blah blah, closing." He's like, "Yeah, you know, let's give it another month. You know, this isn't for everyone." You know, you get that this isn't for everyone speech. You have two choices. Yeah, F you. Or you double down and you do the job the way that they really want you to do it. And that's what happened to me as well. So,
yeah. The interesting part of it was the people that stayed, the majority of them, man, they were like super excited because they kind of got to like put a stake in the ground with me and take some more ownership. And they had to take on some extra roles and stuff to help, you know, get across the, you know, the gap. And so the people that, and that was the thing too, is kind of like shaking it out to say like, okay, who are the people that really like this, that want to be on board with something like this, that buy into this vision? Because if they want that, then we're all doing ourselves a service by just like cutting out all the BS and going, this is what we're creating. Who likes this, right? Like who likes vanilla ice cream? Because if you love chocolate and hate vanilla and you're going to stay in a shop and I'm only going to make vanilla, you're going to hate it, or vice versa, right? And it's like, let's just boil it down to the simplest things. And if we all want the same thing or something similar, and you see how this helps you get to where you personally want to be, then man, it's such a better environment. So it's a lesson. Like if I was to go back in time, I would have been more clear about that and hammered in the vision more frequently earlier on, and spent more time making that clear outside of just like pushing the business forward. That's my personal takeaway from that experience.
Random question, totally different subject. What do you think about text marketing?
Like texting?
Text marketing, like businesses doing text clubs, just getting into people's into people's phones via text.
Yeah, I actually think that it works really well if the people are opting into it with the and they have a clear, like it's pre-framed, like they have an understanding of like what they're gonna get, why that communication is, what the frequency of it is, then it works great. But I think a lot of marketers, because, you know, it goes right to your phone. I think a lot of marketers are starting to overutilize that channel. And so, you know, it's like, how do I stop this thing? STOP caps, you know, whatever.
And they never stop.
And they never stop because a lot of the software is kind of crappy, to be honest with you, in the back end. And so I don't like it from that perspective because it's annoying from a consumer perspective. But it's somebody like, I'll give you an example. We have Bold Nation, which is we're starting to grow right now, which is just like this free community that we're building. I want to turn into something big. And I have some leaders that are helping me like, manage it. And so I have them all on a group text. And I'm not like pushing out general marketing, but like every once in a while I'm contacting them. Like it's a good communication channel because they all see it. We all know how we're going to use it and they love it because they get it right away. But if I was to start abusing that and start like marketing through that, I would just piss them off and that would probably drive them away.
Right.
So be careful with it. It's great, but be careful with it.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, I've got one more question, and it could be a couple minute long answer. But Brian, can you tell us about the $40,000 skateboard video?
I literally had that written down to ask right now.
And was it done on purpose or was it an accident that launched everything?
Okay, so it was both, right? And so I wanted to be a pro skater back in the mid 90s, or the early 90s when I was, in my teens and rollerblade, skating, not like skateboarding, it was rollerblading because it was like cool for about 1 decade. And I was in that decade. It wasn't cool before that. It's not cool now. But anyway, I wanted to be like in the X Games, that level. And, and I was really serious about it. And I was good, and I competed on a pro-am level. I was never good enough, not even remotely close enough to be at X Games type level. And so at some point, I kind of made that recognition of like, all right, well, I love this sport. I love being in extreme sports, but like, I'm not going to end up being pro. And then I started thinking about it. And what I would do is I would take I would borrow, they didn't know. I'd take my parents' VHF camcorder, skate out to where we were skating. And I would put it on tape and we would hit the rails all day. And then we'd go back at night and I would literally sit there and study the tape. Because it's not like today where I'm like, man, if I was a kid today trying to do that, you go on YouTube and you're like, how do you do this trick? And somebody breaks it down in slow motion.
Yeah.
Then you're like, I see a picture of somebody upside down. You're like, can I do that over a flight of stairs? How do they do it? Just toss yourself down a flight of stairs and figure it out. And so anyway, I would watch this stuff like game tape. And then I was like, you know what? I'm on the East Coast. Most of the cool skate videos come out on the West Coast. Rollerblading was still super niche back then. There wasn't a ton of videos every year. And I said, why don't I know all the pros? I knew all the East Coast pros and other guys, and we would skate together. I said, why don't I start filming them? So I worked as a busboy, saved up enough money for a first, real camera. Started filming this thing with no timeline, no intent. And then by the time I was 16, I had enough footage. And it was like, okay, I need to edit this thing somehow. I bought my first computer with Adobe Premiere version 1.1 and literally learned it on my own, started editing. And then I had 10 or 15 minutes of what ultimately was a half hour, 40-minute skate video. And I was like, well, what do I do with this? So I just looked on the back of one of the other skate videos. And it was distributed by Video Action Sports. It had their 800 number. Called them up. It was like, hey, so whoever answered, probably somebody at the front desk. I was like, yo, I got your next skate video. And like, oh, okay, hang on. Let me put you in touch with so-and-so. And they're like, hello. I'm like, I've got your next skate video. They're like, slow down, Junior. Like, send us a VHS. We'll take a look at it. If we like it, we'll call you back. They call me back 2 weeks later. They, we really like this. If you can make it at least 30 minutes, blah, 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 we'll distribute it. So then I was like, wow. So then, 16 into early 17, I learned everything I could. I was taking classes at this, BOCES program in New York with video production, so I could learn. I edited this whole thing, got distribution through Video Action Sports, and sold 5,000 videos at $8 a pop, which is $40,000. And that was everything. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to video now.
It gave you direction. For sure.
Absolutely. And I think my mom was happy that I went down the video route and not this pro skating route.
There's a West Coast guy, Brad Staba, who was big in the skate scene back in the day, now owns a pizza shop. And I talk to him on a regular basis and just crazy, funny, cool dude. Crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's cool. Well, hey, you got any parting shots before we go, Brian? Anything you'd like to, any words of wisdom you'd like to impart?
You've got to promote. You've got a new.
Where can we find you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on social media anywhere. @BoldCEO is my handle on every social platform. My website bold.ceo. You can get just about anything there. And Tim, thanks for the heads up. I'm launching B2B acceleration formula program coming up in January. We're actually going to start promoting it like this next week for businesses, specifically in B2B, like actually established, like small to mid-sized companies, to do a 7-week training program starting in January with myself and a bunch of other really great people, with the whole entire formula of everything that I've used myself and for other businesses that we, you know, do strategy and advise for, of how to really build a entire sales process, you know, shorten the sales cycle. And what I was talking to you guys on the last show about, of really like taking ownership of the sales process and qualifying and pitching like right up front and getting clear on your prospects. You stop wasting all that damn time and start closing more deals. So that's coming up in January. So you can find all the info on bold.ceo. And yeah, this was a lot of fun, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Rock on, guys. Thank you.
Wes, you look handsome. See you, brother.
See ya. Have a good day, everyone.